A New Year prayer for peace. Almighty God and Father, as the year 2020 dawns, I dream of peace for the world and for my country, Nigeria, which has gone through a protracted nightmare by way of economic distress, political instability, social decay, and a precarious security situation on account of the Boko Haram insurgency, the herdsmen banditry, and rampant kidnapping for ransom that appeared to have overwhelmed the law enforcement agents. Though I have watched with sadness the negative trends in the economy, though I have watched with dismay the heightened tension on the political front, and though I have watched with consternation the frightening security situation, I have not abandoned my dream of peace for the new year 2020. In spite of what I see all around the national landscape, I have chosen to hold on to the dream of peace, security, and prosperity for the world and for my country, Nigeria. I am not entirely distracted by the blood and the tears I see around me, nor am I overwhelmed by the selfishness and greed, the hatred and the violence that are all over the place, which today make peace impossible in the world and in our society. Yes, I still dream of peace for the world and for my country, for indeed, what is life without such a dream? As we prepared for Christmas last month, we recall the prophetic words of Prophet Zephaniah to the distressed people of Israel. It was at a time when they found themselves in socio-political and economic circumstances similar to our own today. The prophet told the people, "Shout for joy, daughter Israel, shout aloud. The Lord your God is in your midst, a victorious warrior. He will exult with joy over you. He will renew you by his love. He will with shouts of joy for you as on a day of." Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 14 to 18. At the onset of the new year, my hope for a world of peace, security, and prosperity is once again rekindled as I reflect every day on Prophet Isaiah's classical celebration of hope in one of those cheering Advent readings. Quote, "The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. On the inhabitants of a country in shadow, dark as death, light has blazed forth. For a son has been born for us. A son has been given to us, and dominion has been laid on his shoulders. And this is the name he has been given: Wonder Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace." Isaiah 9, 1-6. As the new year 2020 dawns, therefore, I dream of peace for our troubled world and country, appropriating for us those gracious promises of the Lord through Prophet Isaiah when he says that I will make rivers well up on barren heights and fountains in the midst of valleys. I will turn the wilderness into a lake and dry ground into springs of water. Isaiah 41, 17-18. Yes, I dream of peace for the world and for my country at this time, because I believe that our all-powerful God, whose glorious visitation by way of the incarnation we have just celebrated at Christmas, is able to bring about a transformation by which indeed the wolf will live with the lamb, the panther will lie down with the kid, calf, lion, and fat stock will feast together with a little boy to lead them. There will be no hurt, no harm will be done on all my holy mountain, for the land will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Isaiah 11, 4-9. I dream of peace in the new year because I take seriously the declaration of Jesus Christ in Luke 4:18-19 that, quote, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the afflicted. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to captives, sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim a year of favor from the Lord." I recall too that Jesus says, "I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly." John 10:10. To those who have been humiliated by suffering, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who have labored and are overburdened, and I will give you rest. Shoulder my yoke and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Matthew 11:28-29. Again, Jesus says in John 14:27, "I leave you peace. My peace I give you. The peace which the world cannot give is my gift to you." Lord, in the face of a nation where political dissent is now treated as if it were a treasonable felony, I nevertheless approach the new year 2020 with a great deal of optimism, believing as I do in your love and providence and in the mystery of rejuvenation. I dream of peace for the world and for our troubled country because I know that peace is possible if today we begin a revolution of hope that will include a genuine commitment to the life of righteousness, to the life of truth and justice, which make for peace. I dream of peace because I am a believer who knows that with God all things are possible. Did he not create the world out of a formless void? Did he not bring water out of rock? Did he not put back flesh on dry bones? Did he not raise the dead back to life? Is faith in the resurrection not the cardinal point of Christianity? As the year 2020 dawns, therefore, Almighty Father, I pray for the rejuvenation of the multitude whose life has been a calligraphy of agony and a mosaic of misery. Eternal Father, you who at the dawn of creation breathed your spirit upon the formless void and brought order out of the primordial chaos, let the dawn of a new year bring a sudden twist in the fate of those who in the preceding lean years gracefully sowed their tears and invested their sorrows in your loving hands. Lord, wipe away the tears of the many who weep. Let those who have been sowing in tears now reap in joy. Let there be a change in fortune, O mighty one, for those who held on to your word of life and faithfully awaited your powerful visitation in our land. Forbid it, Lord, that the flood of tears of those who have toiled and grieved in hope should end up in the ocean of decay. No, Lord, make it possible in this new year that their pool of tears shall become a valuable resource to be transformed into an oasis of fortune. Make all things new in our own day as you promised in the book of the Revelations. Fulfill the promise you made through the prophet Ezekiel that I will give them one heart and put a new spirit within them. I will take the stony heart out of their bodies and give them a heart of flesh. In this new year, O God of majesty, I pray that the dream of the prophet Isaiah may come true in our day, that wolves and the sheep will live together in peace, and that leopards will lie down with young goats, that cows and bear will eat together, and that their cows and cubs will lie down in peace, that lions will eat straw like the cattle, and that even a baby will not be harmed if it plays near a poisonous snake. Yes, let Isaiah's dream be realized in our day, that they shall hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Let the dream of the psalmist be fulfilled, that kindness and truth shall meet, and justice and peace shall kiss, that truth shall spring out of the earth, and that justice will look down from heaven. As the new year begins, Lord, help us. Help my brothers and sisters to understand that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Help my brothers and sisters to understand that unless the Lord builds a house, the laborers only labor in vain. Help us to understand, oh wonderful counselor, that to have peace in the world, we must first have peace in our hearts. Impress it upon this generation, the fact that we cannot shake hands with clenched fists. Yes, that just as we cannot get a rose through planting a noxious weed, we cannot have peace while harboring hate in our hearts. Impress upon us the fact that good ends cannot justify immoral means. Disarm our hearts, O Lord, for war begins in the human heart. Let our hearts nurture peace and cultivate love instead. Help us to understand those famous words of St. Irenaeus, that the glory of God is the human person fully alive. Help us to recognize with Thomas Martin that the God of peace is never glorified by any form of human violence. Enable us appreciate with Martin Luther King Jr. that darkness cannot drive out darkness, just as hate cannot drive out hate, and that returning violence for violence only multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Make us understand with John Paul II that violence is a lie, for it goes against the truth of humanity. That violence is a grave crime against humanity, for it destroys the very fabric of the human society. Help us accept the truth that as a personal or social method, violence is totally incapable of changing anything. Lord, show the men and women of our age that the Christian teaching of indiscriminate love, embracing friend and so-called enemy, has become a practical necessity, for humanity is today on the verge of committing suicide. Show us that the basic Christian teaching of unconditional love has become an imperative in an age when indiscriminate destruction threatens the human community and the planet Earth entrusted to humans. Help us to break the cycle of violence in the world and in our society. Teach us the unalterable law that hatred only ceases by love, not counter-hatred. Make the men and women of my generation know that the brave, the truly brave, and the truly heroic are not those who can kill, those who can oppress, those who can dominate and cause untold hardship for others. Make us know that the truly brave are those who can forgive, those who can love in return for hate. Help us to see that in loving and forgiving those who tortured and killed him, Jesus revealed the full potential of humanity. Reveal to us the mystery of love, which is the most subtle form of exorcism. Explain to us that there is a different way of responding to evil, to the machinations of our enemies, that has the potential of breaking the endless cycle of retaliation that now threatens us all with ultimate violence. Help us to see, O Lord, how peace is the outcome of a sustained life of truth, justice, mercy, compassion, forgiveness, and human solidarity. Make us understand, O Lord, that it is no use preaching peace unless we also preach the things that make for peace. Help us to accept the wise words of Pope Paul VI, that if you want peace, you must work for justice. Enable those who seek peace to heed the words of Prophet Micah by acting justly, by loving tenderly, and by walking humbly before you, O Lord. Help us understand that a society cannot live in peace with itself unless every human person is treated with dignity and all human life is reverenced as sacred. Help us realize that peace cannot be privatized. Yes, Lord, teach us that peace cannot be privatized, that there is no room in this global village for pockets of peace amidst a world of poverty, oppression, violence, and strife. Show us clearly that it is not your will that in the same society some people should live in abject poverty, dehumanizing destitution, while others lead a life of conspicuous, senseless consumption. Enable us to know that all human beings are created in your image and likeness, and therefore that each human person is inviolable. Impress upon us that we are each responsible for all, and all responsible for each. Let us know that the fate of the renowned politician who is threatened by the assassin's bullet is the same as the fate of the destitute poor threatened by starvation. Help us to understand that the fate of the businessman violently harassed by kidnappers is the same as the fate of the petty thief that is to be summarily executed by an angry mob. Help us understand that the fate of the innocent worshipper threatened by the terrorist bomb is the same as the fate of the unborn child threatened by the abortionist's forceps. Yes, Lord, help us to appreciate the words of Paul VI, that true human development is the advancement of the human person, the whole person, and all the people. O God of mercy, preach to us once again the Sermon on the Mount. Speak directly to our hearts and make us understand that powerful message of yours known as the Beatitudes. Spell out clearly for our comprehension the 9 lessons that constitute the kernel of the gospel. Help us to appreciate the fact that, contrary to the general perception, the poor are truly blessed. Help us to understand that, contrary to the general perception, the gentle are truly blessed. That those who mourn are truly blessed. That those who hunger and thirst for righteousness are truly blessed. That those who are merciful are truly blessed. And that those who are pure in heart are truly blessed. That the peacemakers are truly blessed. That those persecuted in the cause of righteousness are truly blessed, and that those abused and maligned for your name's sake are truly blessed. Make us understand the logic of the Magnificat, the Song of Mary. Help us to see that the religion of Jesus Christ is not the opium of the people. No, that the religion of Jesus Christ is a force that exalts the lowly and casts down the proud. A force that comforts the afflicted and afflicts the comfortable. A force that feeds the hungry and sends the sated away empty. Impress on us the fact that Christ did not bring peace to the world as a kind of spiritual tranquilizer. No. Enable us to see with Thomas Merton that Christ brought to his disciples a vocation, a task to struggle to establish peace, not only in their hearts, but in their human society. Enable us, Lord, to overcome the widespread illusion that life is a property to be defended. That illusion which has given rise to so much violence everywhere. Instead, Lord, make us grasp the truth that life is a gift meant to be shared. Grant us the understanding which brings peace, and the peace which surpasses understanding. Make us accept the fact that, all pretensions to the contrary notwithstanding, only the meek and the humble shall inherit the earth. All pretensions to the contrary notwithstanding, Only peacemakers shall be called sons and daughters of God. Yes, Lord, convince the men and women of this generation that all appearances to the contrary notwithstanding, peace will be the last word of history. That in spite of what we see all around today, convince us that peace will be the last word of history. Let many of us be convinced of this, so that we may not be afraid to take a chance on peace, that we may relentlessly work for peace in a world of strife, and that we may tirelessly teach peace amidst the deafening drums of war. Show us, Lord, how to take a stand amidst the pervading darkness in deliberate clarity, calmness, and confidence. Teach us how to be steadfast in perfect peace and cheerfulness in the midst of tension, gloom, selfishness, and hatefulness. Above all, Lord, help us to hold on to our ideals in spite of everything. Show us that we cannot build up our hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. Show us that in a world of madness, it is crazy to surrender our dreams and to see life as it is rather than it ought to be. Help us to keep our hope as long as we live. For as Dostoevsky says, to live without hope is to cease to live. O God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, you are not known for half measures. You are not known to abandon your drowning faithful who cry to you midstream. Rather, faithfulness is the very nature of your being. The psalmist assures us that those who know you, those who cling to your name, those who cry to you when they are in distress, you will not abandon them. You will be at their side to save them. We read in the book of Exodus that with a mighty hand you saw the oppressed children of Israel through the Red Sea dry shod, while the chariots of their merciful pursuers perished in the swamp. When on Mount Carmel, the corrupt devotees of Baal and Ashtaroth took on your servant Elijah, you did not abandon him in his hour of need. Instead, your vindication brought down a consuming fire. When at the Sea of Galilee, the boat in which the disciples of Jesus were traveling was strengthened by a violent storm, they were not abandoned to their miserable fate. Your eternal Son spoke the word of power, and all was calm again. And when at a time of acute persecution, your servants, Peter and John, cried to you from their prison cells, you did not look the other way. Instead, you miraculously loosened their bonds and threw open the gates of their jailhouse. So, Lord, visit us in this new year and convict our elite of the life of debauchery by which we have often elevated thievery into a high-state craft. Visit us this year, Lord, and uproot the monumental pillars of greed and avarice, which constituted a pandemic national perversion that brought this nation to its knees in recent times. Visit us this year and weed clean from our national landscape the thorns and the thistles, the brambles and the aftergrowth of systemic corruption that, like noxious plants, have filled the entire environment with a poisonous stench. Visit this year our nation and dislodge completely the demon of kleptomania, which until now has betrayed our land like a colossus and has led us along the dark alleys of economic depression, political anarchy, social disintegration, and international alienation. O Almighty Father, visit us and deliver us from blind guides. Visit us and deliver us from callous mercenaries. Visit us and deliver us from greedy opportunists who plunder the commonwealth with utter recklessness. Come and save our nation, Nigeria, from the hands of primitive feudalists. Come and save our nation from influence peddlers. Come and save our nation from contract chasers and prostitutes of power, as well as their agents and allies at all levels, who camouflage as politicians. Breathe your almighty breath upon us this year, Lord, and flush out of our midst the pathological thieves. Flush out of our midst the habitual rogues. Flush out of our midst the relentless brigands, and destroy the myth of money and power. Destroy the myth of security and invisibility, so that the corrupt elements that still litter our national landscape may give way permanently, in order that righteousness may rise and flower in our country, and that Jesus' civilization of love may blossom in these climes. Come down, Lord, and show the men and women of reason in our country how to resist the temptation to apathy and despondency. Show us how to rise up and be counted on the side of reason. Show us how to rise up and be counted on the side of truth. Show us how to rise up and be counted on the side of justice. Yes, Lord, show us how to refrain from joining the bandwagon in a life of greed and graft. Visit us in the course of this year 2020, Lord, and enable us to appreciate the fact that peace does not just happen. Make us understand that it is no use preaching peace, yes, unless we do the things that make for peace. Show us how to cultivate and promote love and compassion and forgiveness, which alone bring peace and prosperity. Show us that respect for human dignity and rights is the secret of peace, and that the peace of all only comes from the justice of each. Show us that if today we begin to cultivate these virtues, then we would have laid the foundation for a more wholesome life this year and beyond. Intervene in our affairs, O Lord, and let those who claim to know you in this country, let those who claim to be Christians in this country and others who claim to be Muslims realize that the God of peace is never glorified by human violence. And that those who use religious justification to slaughter their neighbors are only blaspheming. They do not know God. Come down today, Lord, and heal my people of their blindness and free them. Free my brothers and sisters permanently from the endless cycle of violence and war. Help my people to recognize that just as darkness cannot drive away darkness, and fire cannot quench fire, violence can never bring about peace. Lord, grant us this new year, 2020, the generosity of hearts, that we may let go of anger, that we may let go of resentment over the injustices of succeeding governments since independence, and over the atrocities of the Civil War, and over the gross violation of human rights during the profligate regimes of Babangida, of Abacha, of Obasanjo and Jonathan, and over the gross ineptitude, insensitivity, impunity of the Buhari regime. Disarm the hearts of the Boko Haram jihadists of the Northeast. Disarm the hearts of the marauding headsmen of Kaduna and Benue. Disarm the hearts of the violent bandits of Zamfara and Katsina. Disarm the hearts of the ethnic warlords and tribal champions across the country. Visit us again, Lord, and teach us to forgive and to forget. For a world without forgiveness is a cold world of endless strife. This year, Lord, grant that there may be a moratorium on all anger and on all vengeance. Grant that there may be a moratorium in our land. Grant that there may be a ceasefire between warring parties in Nigeria. That there may be a ceasefire between warring parties from Shagamu to Damaturu. That there may be a ceasefire between warring parties from Bonny to Potiskum. In this new year, O God of majesty, O Rock of ages, I pray that the dream of Prophet Isaiah concerning the time of cosmic reconciliation may come true for us in this country. Let the Yoruba lion and the Hausa leopard eat straw together with the Igbo wolf, and let the innocent thief sportive child play into the hole of the Fulani cobra with no hurt, with no harm. Let the deadly Boko Haram insurgents of Maiduguri shake hands of peace with their neighbors across the country. Let the dreaded tigers of Kagoro cultivate friendship with the fierce cheetahs of Kaduna. Let the ferocious dogs of Bukuru wag their tails at the wild cats of Jos North. Let the fierce crocodiles of Yenagoa swim peacefully with the dreaded sharks of Port Harcourt in the oily waters of the Delta. Yes, Lord, let the bloodhounds of PDP, the ferocious dogs of APC, the wild cats of APGA, the dreaded vipers of ADC and the black scorpions of ANRP, and the foot soldiers of all other parties experience a transformation so as to stop approaching politics with a killer's touch. Let all politicians in Nigeria stop approaching politics with a killer's touch. Let them begin to see politics as the art of nurturing life and the art of building society, not an exercise in elite brigandage. Look down from on high, Lord, so that the winds of righteousness may blow. Let the winds of righteousness blow from Sokoto Kokano. Let the winds of righteousness blow from Kaduna to Port Harcourt. Let the waters of justice flow from Lagos to Calabar. Visit this land this year, Lord, so that right may dwell in the highlands of Jos and Obudu, so that equity may flourish in the creeks of Warri and Yenagoa. Let your justice roll like rolling stone over the mountains of Adamawa and Taraba. And let your peace flow like an overflowing stream in the valleys of Delta and Bayelsa. Come and finish your work in our midst, O God of compassion, so that truth may reign in the rocks of Abuja and Abeokuta, so that love may grow on the hills of Enugu and Ibadan. Come, Lord, and finish your work in Nigeria, that peace may flourish on the divided city of Kaduna, that harmony may prevail on the plains of Makurdi and Katsina, and that security may abide in the forest regions of Abakaliki and Benin City. O Lord, visit us this year and chase away from our landscape the bloodthirsty fanatics and terrorist insurgents that have held this land hostage and devoured thousands of its people these last few years. Dislodge the Boko Haram warriors along with their iniquitous sponsors and callous conspirators from their strangleholds, so that your people may once again live in peace and worship you in safety and in security, so that your school children may carry on their study exercise in peace and security. Yes, from Maiduguri to Yola and Damaturu, and from Bama to Chibok and Biu. Visit us this year and dislodge the armed bandits, the murderous headsmen, and the vile kidnappers that have transformed our towns and villages, our farm settlements and motorways into a theater of war. From Zamfara to Benue, from Kaduna to Enugu, from Ondo to Bayelsa, dislodge these armed bandits from our national landscape, so that our farmers may till the soil and harvest their crops in peace, so that our motorists may ply the road from north to south and from east to west in safety and in security. Visit us this year, O God of all goodness, and lead us from death to life. Lead us from falsehood to truth. Lead us from fear to trust. Lead us from despair to hope. Lead us from hate to love. And lead us from war to peace. Breathe your powerful breath on us, O Lord. Breathe your powerful breath over the champions of our national destiny, until the lives of the lowly poor become precious in their eyes. Yes, Lord, breathe your powerful breath on those who superintend our society until the lives of the lowly poor become precious in their eyes, and until poverty and destitution are replaced by dignity and prosperity. Pour your oil of anointing on the administrators of the Nigerian Commonwealth, I say, Lord, until the hungry are fed and the thirsty are given drink, and until leadership becomes synonymous with service and shepherding. Confirm this new year as the year of favor, O God, so that our land may be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Lord, as you answer my prayers for peace, I pledge on my part and on behalf of your faithful followers, I pledge to be an instrument of your justice and peace. I know that I cannot change anything in the world until I first experience that change within myself. So, today, and every day that I may live, I pledge to say no to hate. I pledge to say no to ethnic bigotry. I pledge to say no to greed. I pledge to say no to avarice. I pledge to say no to covetousness. I pledge to say no to class prejudice. I pledge to say no to religious intolerance. I pledge to say no to violence in all its forms. I pledge to say no to corruption in all its shapes and forms and sizes. Yes, today and every day that I may live, I pledge to say no to all forms of behavior that abuse, all forms of behavior that diminish or dehumanize anyone of those created in your image and likeness. And I am committed to giving others the knowledge it takes to do the same. I promise, Lord, that I shall cry out against the various manifestations of the culture of death in our society. I promise you, Lord, that I shall cry out against terrorist bombing that kills indiscriminately. I promise you, Lord, that I shall cry out against hired assassinations by which perceived enemies are callously eliminated. I promise you, Lord, that I shall cry out against the practice of abortion by which the life of the unborn is senselessly terminated. I promise you, Lord, that I shall cry out against capital punishment by which an entire society celebrates vengeance. I promise you, Lord, that I shall cry out against jungle justice and extrajudicial killings at the hands of security agents. I promise you that I shall cry out against mob justice or the summary execution of mere suspects by an angry mob. I shall repeat your injunction in the Decalogue to them. Thou shalt not kill. I shall repeat this to the men and women of my generation until my vocal cords collapse. Lord, I pledge not to compromise with violence, whether personal violence, national violence, or international violence, for violence is always wrong. Today, and every day that I may live, I pledge not to adjust to injustice. No. For as Eknat SORM says, to be well adjusted in a bad situation is not at all desirable. And that is not for me, Lord. I pledge that I shall always be angered by injustice and cruelty. For not to be so is insensitivity. Not to do so is to be insensitive. I pledge not to bear ill will towards anyone. I pledge not to submit to injustice towards anyone. I pledge to conquer untruth by truth. And with Mahatma Gandhi, I pledge that in the process of resisting untruth, I shall put up with all or whatever suffering may come my way. Lord, I say I want to be afire with love for the bruised poor of our land. I want to be in solidarity with the abused poor of every land. For as the Cuban writer Jose Marti says, I have no right to weep tears when others are weeping blood. Yes, I have no right to weep only tears when others are weeping blood. I want to be ablaze with enthusiasm for the cause of the oppressed and the downtrodden, the widow and the orphan, the destitute and the handicapped, those detained without trial and those forced into exile. I want to identify passionately with those who are consigned to the margins of society and those who have lost out in the power equation of a society where the winner takes all. I want to be on the side of all those who constitute the list of Jesus' brethren. For I recognize that in situations of injustice, to be neutral is to be on the side of the oppressor. Yes, Lord, like Martin Luther King Jr., I would like to be known as a drum major for peace. I would like to be known as a drum major for truth, a drum major for justice, a drum major for righteousness, a drum major for human solidarity, a drum major for non-violence and peace. Lord, I would like to be an expert in the art of peacemaking. I would like to be an expert in making peace, pulling down the mountains of selfishness and filling up the valleys of greed, cutting down the thorn bushes of hostility and raising up the lilies of hospitality, building bridges across the rivers of hate and bringing together the fragments of disparate humanity. I would like to be an expert in peace building, stitching torn nerves and mending broken bones, igniting the fire of charity and fanning the flame of humanity. Yes, I would like to be an expert in peacemaking, rocking the boat that vengeance has set on sail and sending to sea the ship of reconciliation, destroying the myth of power and security and laying down the foundation for a civilization of love. Yes, Lord, I would like to be an expert in the art of discovering the good and affirming the positive side of every human person. For no one of those created in your image is entirely bad. In this way, I want to place my foot on the surface of the earth and put my seal of peace on the sands of time. I know that my peaceful steps are significant enough to make a difference, yes. If I can take one peaceful step, then I know that I can take a second one. And with a little more effort, I know I can take 1,000 peaceful steps. And all these peaceful steps, I know, shall be my seal on the sands of time. And thus, I know I shall make a difference. I make these commitments, O Lord, with the awareness that the end of life, the goal of life, the purpose of life is not to achieve pleasure and to avoid pain. I make these pledges because I recognize with Martin Luther King Jr. that the goal of life is to stand up for the truth of God in season and out of season, welcome or unwelcome, come with me. I make these promises because I know that it is only by giving our lives away that we truly find life, and that the truest act of courage or the strongest act of humanity is to sacrifice oneself for others in a totally non-violent struggle for justice. Lord, I ask that you grant me the special grace you granted Martin Luther King Jr. to match the wicked person's capacity to inflict suffering with my capacity to endure suffering. This, at the end of the day, is what it means to be human. So, Lord, help me to be truly human. And Lord, since I desire peace like St. Francis of Assisi, permit me, Lord, to end my New Year prayer with a prayer of that celebrated apostle of peace. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there is doubt, true faith in you. O Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is despair, let me give you hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. O Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. O Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. In Jesus' name I pray.